I'm Aaron from PhoneDog.com, and I'm packing two of the hottest devices on the market right now. Now, both of these phones have in some way revolutionized the wireless industry as we know it. On one hand, you have the Samsung Galaxy Note. This phone's been out for a couple of weeks, but it's packing a huge 5.3-inch display, and the AT&T version has a dual-core 1.5 GHz Snapdragon processor, an 8-megapixel camera, a front-facing camera, Android 2.3, and more. Then you have the iconic Apple iPhone 4S. Typical stuff here, Apple A5 dual-core processor, 8-megapixel camera on the back, and it's got a 3.5-inch Retina display on this sucker. So as you can see, very different designs that are going to appeal to very different people, but it's dogfight time. You know what we do in dogfight land? We take a look at both of these and see which one's the best all-around device. Let's take a look, but first some love to Best Buy Mobile for hooking us up with a bunch of phones like this for use in our one-paw bandit game. When you go into Best Buy Mobile, you're going to walk out working. They'll help you set up your email, your web, your contacts, and more. So be it the iPhone 4S or the Samsung Galaxy Note, you're going to walk out the door and be good to go. Let's take a look at this. Which one's the best? Of course, web browsing would be a particular point of interest for people considering either one of these devices. So let's take a look at the browser, and we'll go to PhoneDog on both of these and take a look. So 4G LTE runs over on the Galaxy Note, HSPA Plus over on the AT&T version, which AT&T also refers to as 4G. So they've got 4G and 4G LTE, with the first one being HSPA Plus. So it's running on HSPA Plus. On AT&T. It's running on CDMA, EVDO, Revision A on the other two carriers, Sprint and Verizon, so it's running on 3G with them. However, on the iPhone, when you see it on AT&T, it says 3G. So technically, 3G device versus 4G LTE device in terms of internet connectivity. There's no 4G LTE iPhone, obviously, just yet, but you can see PhoneDog's loading out. Now take a look at the difference here. They're both in the same, at the same point on the page, and take a look at the difference in screen real estate here when you're comparing PhoneDog to PhoneDog. You can see pinch to zoom, relatively responsive over here on the on the Galaxy Note, thanks to the Snapdragon processor that's a dual-core 1.5 gigahertz chip. And then you have this one over here with the A5 dual-core, and you can see how fluid and responsive it is as well. We'll scroll down through here and getting a little bit of lag, but there it is. Okay, so pinch to zoom, relatively responsive over on this bad boy as well. And so the pinch to zoom, and then of course the portrait to landscape transitions, nice and fast. And then of course you can zoom in and zoom out by using your fingers. Now, we can go over here and add a second page, so you can see PhoneDog's there, hit a new page, and it loads up right here. And then when I want to go back to PhoneDog, I can easily scroll between those two. So again, very fluid in a lot of the operations on the iPhone 4S. Then over here, same thing, I can go over here, and you can see, because it's a large display, if you've seen TouchWiz 4.0 before, you can see the differences up here between this browser on a 5.3-inch display and on this version of TouchWiz 4.0, as opposed to, let's say, the Skyrocket or the Galaxy S2 or some of the other devices that are also running 4.0. But you can see, I mean, take a look at the screen real estate. If you're somebody that browses the web a lot, and just before I do that, you know, of course, portrait to landscape, responsive as well. If you're somebody that browses the web a lot, perhaps you watch a lot of YouTube videos, perhaps you listen to music or watch music videos, it's going to be a great device for you because it's just a big display. It's still relatively pocketable. It's a big phone, and you can't obviously wrap your hand around it, or at least I can't wrap my hand around it, but still, it's responsive, it works well, and it's got a nice big display with the pinch to zoom capabilities are pretty decent. But let's load up a second page, and you can see, I'll go in here, for example, and take a look at why is the Note, hey, this is pretty fitting, why is the Note so desirable? So let's say I was reading that, and I want to go to my second window here. You can see it'll leave me right where I left off, and I can go to the second window and come right back to PhoneDog, and it shows where I was zoomed in. So that's a nice little touch, and of course still pretty responsive. You can see a little bit of a transition lag there, but it's not too bad. Otherwise, back and forward, of course, bookmarks, got your RSS button, and then your URL entry area right there. So let's take a look at speed test on both of these devices and load that up and take a look. And I'm going to pull this one away really quickly while I activate the wireless network. So we're going to go into airplane mode. Then I'm going to come over here and do a speed test because you're running 4G LTE against AT&T's HSPA Plus, which apparently I don't actually have speed test on here. Speed test is up and running and both on the same server, so let's take a look. And I'll tell you about call quality while those are running. I've been relatively impressed with both of these devices on the call quality front. The biggest flaw I see in the iPhone 4S is it seems to pick up a lot of background noise, whereas the Galaxy Note does not. Earpiece is a little bit low though on the Galaxy Note, so if you're hard of hearing or you like a loud earpiece, the iPhone 4S is going to be a little bit better in that department. If you want something that has better noise cancellation, you don't want to hear all those noises in the background and all the wind coming from when you're driving down the road, it's going to be the Galaxy Note. That's going to be the better device for you. The noise cancellation is a little bit better. I do get that all the time in the iPhone. People are like, where are you? Why is it so loud? And that's something I hope Apple works on in future versions of the iPhone, be it the 5 or the 6. And you can see speeds just aren't great across the board here for whatever reason. This is obviously in a not so great AT&T area. I'm actually shooting this part of the video in my home office, and I'm out of the office today. Long story, too much traffic because of CIAA, but oh well. You can see 4.43 megabits per second over here on 4G LTE, 0.81 megabits per second over here on HSPA Plus, and the upload 0.57 megabits per second, 7.26 megabits per second. On the upload. So you can see, not the best in the world. AT&T speeds, I've seen them as high as 10 megabits per second in great LTE areas. I've seen HSPA Plus as high as about 6 megabits per second in just a phenomenal HSPA Plus area. So we'll take a look at quadrant standard over here on the Galaxy Note. And while that's running, we'll take a look at some of the other stuff over here on the iPhone, because obviously there's no quadrant standard available for the 4S, but we'll take a look and run the full benchmark here. And it's been updated to support dual-core processors and more. So hopefully it's a more accurate indicator, even though I always say take it with a grain of salt, what you see on quadrant standard. So again, very different interfaces here, and while this is very responsive, the downside is, like I said in part 1, you don't get any widget support. So no ability to add widgets or any little snippets of information on the outside of the device. So anything you do, be it check the weather, load up your camera, view Facebook, whatever it is, look at Twitter, it's all got to be done through an actual application as opposed to just using a widget. Now the upside is the battery life's a little bit better. This has a 1,420 milliamp hour battery, and while it does pale in comparison to previous iPhones because of the dual-core processor and more, and of course iOS 5 just seems to take a little bit more battery power, it does a pretty decent job for the most part of making it through the day. I can make it about 14 hours with moderate use on the iPhone 4S and make it through the day without requiring a charge. So I've had a lot of success. There were a lot of battery issues circulating around with the 4S when it first came out, but otherwise I've had pretty decent success. The Galaxy Note, very similar here, about 12 hours with a giant 2,500 milliamp hour battery. And of course, here's the phone application as well. And you can see nothing's really changed here. You have your favorites, your recents, contacts, and of course, visual voicemail, which you can access down here. And here's your keypad. Keys are all together, and then you have the ability to add a contact. You can call, or you can delete the actual number itself. And like I said in part 1, if you wonder why I keep pulling them away, it's because both of these I have my personal SIM cards in them, so they've been used as personal devices. So we're going to load up quadrant standard over here, loading up at 2,396, so definitely respectable, but again, take quadrant standard with a grain of salt. 2,396, according to this, comes in higher than the Galaxy Tab, the Galaxy Nexus, and the Nexus S. So it's a pretty fast device. That said, having worked with the international version and the AT&T version, I do see some lag on the AT&T version that I don't see on the international version. I'll say that though, I'll preface that or continue that by saying that out of all the Exynos processor devices I've worked with, the International Note performs the least amazing to me out of any of the Exynos devices. Galaxy S2 is still where it's at if you want an Exynos processor. Even the Exynos chip in the International Note just seems like it leaves a lot to be desired. But let's take a look at the 8 megapixel cameras on both of these, because you're running 8 megapixel shooters, 1080p HD video recording, and again, two very different interfaces here. And before we close, we've got to talk about the media ecosystem, because that's really a pretty defining difference between these two devices. I don't want to spend too much time on this. We'll bring in the Galaxy Nexus here. We've got a smattering of phones over here. So Galaxy Nexus loaded up, picture taken. You can see that right there. You don't get a whole lot of editing options on the iPhone camera. They do get the shortcut here in iOS 5 to go back to the camera. You get the option to choose between camera, video camera, and then you have some minor options here, HDR on or off and grid on or off along with flash. Then of course you can easily see your gallery. So over here, we're going to load this up, and of course giant display, picture taken, shutter speed's a little bit laggy, but you do have the settings all on the camera settings itself, so you can see single shots, your ISO, your white balance, and more over there. So before the video runs out, I want to show you the market differences as well, because you got Android's market versus the App Store, and there are some differences in terms of looks. So let's go in here and let's load up. Let's go back to the beginning, and you can see here, just trying to use this one-handed while I have the iPhone in the other hand is not the easiest thing to do, to say the least. So we're going to load up top 25 categories. So the iPhone's App Store, and then of course you have Android Market. Android Market, you can access apps, music, books, and movies. Over here you've got your applications, and then if you want to download music, you go to the iTunes area, which is a separate application. So you've got featured, I have categories, search, then of course updates as well, and I can see top paid, top free applications. So just using a comparison here, we'll load up yeah, whatever, Pinterest versus, let's see, an AT&T featured application. Go to drive mode, just using this as an example because I want to show you the difference. And take a look at the screen size difference between these two devices. It's pretty huge, but you can see download links are right there in the top right-hand corner on both. You've got some screenshot samples, your descriptions on both, and of course screenshots over here. And just holding these side by side so you can see, of course, down here you got your star ratings, and then on the iOS platform you've got your star ratings down at the bottom as well. And then along with what users also viewed, what they installed, and then more developer information. And then it's down here as well. So I won't deny, and Apple's actually admitted this as well, you know, or they kind of admitted it, sort of. It's, you know, the App Store needs to be overhauled. It's been like this for a long time. It's a little bit long in the tooth. They've updated the Android market quite a bit, and it's definitely doing a great job. That said, the ecosystem still wins hands down in the iPhone. Out of the box, the iTunes, iOS, iPod media ecosystem. I can come into iTunes within 5 minutes of buying this device, download a song, have it on my iPod, on my phone, the iPod part of the phone, and then I can actually access it on my computer as well, thanks to iTunes 10.5. So the options are huge here. I can download Adele's latest song on my iPhone while I'm traveling. I can have it show up on my computer. Vice versa, I can download a song on my computer, and with that automatic sync turned on, which is a feature of iOS 5 and iTunes 10.5, I can easily access my music. So it's really nice, and that type of stuff along with iCloud, which is a new feature on iOS 5. Those are nice benefits to the platform. I love that ability. The music thing is huge to me. This is something I can see my mother, and actually my dad does have an iPhone, I can see them using where, you know, a quick song, 5 minutes out of the box. They're not necessarily the most savvy people in the world when it comes to technology, but they can download a song and within 5 minutes have it ready to play. Over here, there are plenty of options, you know, and of course if you're coming from iTunes or coming from something else, you can use Double Twist, you can use AirSync, a lot of different applications, Google Music, they give you plenty of choice over here, but it's still very hard to get music set up and configured properly, to go through all the different steps. You know, it's still an intermediate task to say the least. So I think, you know, in terms of ecosystem, iOS is still where the party's at over there. But in terms of the application store, Android market, in terms of the overall look of it, Android market takes the lead there. So it's a tough dogfight, and it's really going to depend on the form factor that you want. I wish there's so much more I wish we could cover in these dogfights, but of course, it's only 2 parts of video, you know, and they go by so quickly. The winner of the dogfight, and give me a drum roll please, drum roll. The winner of the dogfight is the Samsung Galaxy Note. And I'll tell you why. The reason why, a couple of reasons. One, the specs are fantastic over here. You've got a dual-core processor, you've got a giant display, and this is not going to be for everybody. This is too big of a phone, and if you like Android, you like TouchWiz 4.0, you're looking for something else, consider the Galaxy S2, maybe the Skyrocket on AT&T, which is also another LTE device. But, you know, a beautiful device with a nice big battery. The App Store has been updated. It definitely is fit for 2012. That said, the ecosystem, if you're a music buff, I will always recommend, at least right now until Android does something about the standardization of music, I will always recommend the iPhone 4S. Music department, they've done a great job with Google Music. They're integrating it into the Android market. They're doing a better job with that, but Apple definitely got the lead, and I don't think anybody can deny this. Apple definitely got the lead with iTunes, and they integrated it in from day one with the iPhone, and it continues to be part of the success of the iPhone series. I mean, you know, hey, I have iTunes. I want it to work well with my phone. I want my iPod music, and this is stuff I hear from consumers on a regular basis. I want the iPod music on my phone. It's easy to access over here on the iPhone 4S, and within 5 minutes I can get it over here easily, quickly, no steps, no additional stuff required, no additional applications, no supporting plugins, etc., etc. So from the ecosystem, in terms of music, iPhone 4S continues to win that. But in terms of all-around best device and device that wins the dogfight, it's the Galaxy Note. Much more coverage to come on PhoneDog.com with both of these devices, so keep it locked on the site. Be sure to like us on Facebook, Facebook.com/PhoneDog. Let me know what you think. You think the Galaxy Note's the winner? You think the 4S is the winner? You think there's a feature you love or hate about either of these devices? Let me know, PhoneDog_Aaron. But what I will tell you is, regardless if you get either of these devices, I think you're going to be pretty happy because they're both killer smartphones. They're both high-end smartphones. And you should just be happy they have an awesome high-end smartphone, right? So that's something to keep in mind. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great weekend, and as always, we'll see you next time.